Let's travel back in time to the green hills of Antrim in Northern Ireland. Here, defying all the winds of history, a unique human settlement flourished, enduring for nearly 1,000 years. Imagine, this small community witnessed and survived the most terrible cataclysms that brought entire empires to their knees. The merciless waves of European famine, the shadow of the Black Death, the devastating Irish potato famine, they endured it all. Even nature itself tested their resilience, lashing them with the anomalous heat of the medieval warm period and the icy breath of the Little Ice Age. Archaeologists digging into the layers of earth and historians studying ancient manuscripts have come to a startling conclusion. The mortality rate in this isolated valley was incomparably lower than in any neighboring lands. What was the secret of their incredible resilience? Scholars, comparing their way of life with other Irish communities, have stumbled upon a clue. Their social structure was completely free. There were no masters or rent-paying slaves, no landowners dictating their will. Every inhabitant of this community was the master of their own destiny, enjoying complete freedom to choose what to sow, how to till the land, and how to obtain food as the world around them changed. This remarkable autonomy allowed them to develop a unique system for anticipating risks. They didn't wait for famine or epidemics to strike, they prepared in advance. Their independence from the outside world, from greedy merchants or despotic feudal lords, became their greatest shield. Moreover, they developed a cunning survival strategy based on diversity. Soil analysis from ancient wells revealed that these people never put all their eggs in one basket. They simultaneously farmed and raised livestock, making extensive use of the bounty of the wild. This approach allowed them to spread risks. If their crops failed, their livestock and forests fed them, and the absence of exorbitant rents and taxes gave them the invaluable opportunity to stockpile food. In times of famine, when their neighbors died, they always had something left over. But even the strongest walls crumble under the onslaught of time. By the early 20th century, the call of big cities proved stronger than ancient traditions. Young people flocked to earn money, and the unique community slowly faded away. However, its history did not sink into oblivion. It has become a living lesson for modern scholars, a clear example of how social organization and freedom can become the main weapons in the fight against environmental disasters, deadly diseases, and protracted economic crises. Now, let's travel to another era and another continent. In the harsh lands of the Saravian Peninsula, at the end of the 5th century, the kingdom of Imn was ruled by a man whose name inspired awe. This was King Ducha. For nearly 30 years, his power was absolute, and his cruelty boundless. Ancient chronicles, written with a trembling hand, recount his deeds, which chill the blood. His reign was marked by a series of exemplary and merciless executions, targeting the most noble and powerful families of the kingdom. According to these testimonies, Ducha turned his palace into a veritable slaughterhouse. He lured the descendants of aristocratic families into his chambers, where not honors but painful deaths awaited them. Executions were often accompanied by sophisticated torture and public humiliation, so that everyone could see what awaited anyone who dared cast a shadow of doubt on his authority. These bloody reprisals were his way of strengthening the throne and demonstrating his complete, total control over the elite. But terror only breeds hatred. The tyrant's behavior sparked a wave of silent indignation among those who remained alive. The aristocracy's patience had run out. A conspiracy had been brewing in the shadows of palace intrigue, and one day it came to a bloody conclusion. Ducha was assassinated in his own residence, the very place where he had spilled so much blood. But the tyrant's death was not the end of the story. His body was transformed into a grim message. Ducha's head was put on public display as a dire warning to all future rulers that abuse of power and mass murder would not go unpunished. This brutal episode vividly illustrates the eternal drama of the relationship between absolute, centralized authority and the aristocracy. Throughout the history of the Middle East, many rulers have used violence to retain their throne and maintain order. But this bloody dance of power and resistance demonstrates that even the most powerful tyrant is vulnerable when the nobility unites against him. Now let's leave the bloody chronicles of the past and turn our gaze to the stars, where far more ancient secrets lie. Scientists recently made an incredible discovery that could revolutionize our understanding of the origins of life. Some meteorites, cosmic wanderers that fell to our planet, turned out to be veritable time capsules. Inside them, researchers discovered all 4 fundamental building blocks of the genetic code: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. This discovery opens up truly dizzying possibilities. Just think, the genetic code of absolutely every living thing on Earth, from bacteria to humans, consists of the very same elements found in these rocks from space. This led scientists to a revolutionary hypothesis. What if the key components necessary for the emergence of life did not originate in the primordial soup on our planet at all? What if they arose in the icy void of interstellar molecular clouds and were then delivered to the young Earth by billions of meteorites and comets? This cosmic rain could have brought the very same starting material from which, through complex chemical reactions, the first RNA and DNA molecules formed, laying the foundation for all life. Isotopic analysis of these extraterrestrial nucleotides confirmed that they have nothing in common with terrestrial biology. They were born in a unique chemical laboratory in space. This makes us wonder, perhaps life on Earth is the result not only of spontaneous generation, but also of a massive exchange of matter between planets. Many researchers now ask, if the building blocks of life are so common in the universe, does genetic material exist elsewhere? Could life have flourished on other planets under conditions similar to ours? The discovery of all 4 DNA bases in meteorites is more than just a scientific sensation. It fuels the boldest hypotheses about extraterrestrial life, based on the same universal chemical laws. This mystery remains at the forefront of astrobiology, forcing us to peer ever deeper into the cosmic abyss in search of answers to the ultimate question: are we alone in the universe? But space isn't the only place that holds its secrets. Here on Earth, there are mysteries no less astounding. For example, the Silent Stone Guardians scattered across Scotland and America. Throughout the Scottish Highlands, archaeologists are finding ancient boulders inscribed with mysterious symbols. These images, carved into granite thousands of years ago, repeat specific motifs: complex geometric shapes, concentric curves, and enigmatic designs that we cannot identify. Thousands of these stones stand across the country, from Kilmartin to the north coast, keeping silent about something. Their origin and true meaning remain one of history's greatest mysteries. Perhaps they were an ancient form of writing, a means of communication between prehistoric tribes. Or perhaps these symbols marked sacred sites, cultural traditions, or the boundaries of ancient domains. But the most astonishing thing is something else. Nearly identical patterns are found on stones thousands of kilometers away, across the Atlantic Ocean, in North Carolina, USA. The most famous of these is the Judakala stone, a sacred artifact carefully preserved and revered by the Cherokee people. The symbols on this stone are strikingly similar to those found in Scotland. Humanoid figures with an unnatural number of fingers, spirals, notches, and animal silhouettes. They form a complex system of symbols that researchers are still struggling to decipher. Cherokee oral traditions claim that these markings were left by a giant 7-fingered creature named Judakula to mark the boundaries of his hunting grounds. The striking similarities in style and technique between the carvings on the stones of Scotland and North Carolina give rise to the most daring theories. Could there have been connections or cultural exchanges between these regions in ancient times? After all, in prehistoric times, the Atlantic Ocean was not a barrier, but a great waterway. Some scholars wonder, were there migrations or contacts between Europe and America long before Columbus? Others are inclined to believe that this is simply a striking case of the parallel cultural development of two completely isolated civilizations. So far, comparative analysis has not yielded a definitive answer. But the mythology surrounding these stones lives on. Cherokee legends tell of giants, and Scottish traditions are full of references to deities and giants. The mysterious similarities between the Scottish stones and the Judaculla rock continue to excite the minds, raising questions about the collective memory of humanity and possible transcontinental contacts in the mists of prehistory. Now, let's travel to the icy embrace of the polar regions to glimpse a world that long ago vanished. Fossil remains and genetic data extracted from permafrost reveal an epic saga of life's adaptation to the most extreme conditions on the planet. Today, it's a kingdom of ice and silence, but millions of years ago, during periods of global warming, the polar regions were thriving and diverse ecosystems. Life here flourished with astonishing intensity. Imagine the icy steppes of Siberia and North America during the Pleistocene. Herds of true giants roamed here, massive mammals that would have dwarfed the modern world, majestic mammoths, mighty woolly rhinoceroses, ancient cave bears, and saber-toothed predators ruled this harsh land. Radiocarbon dating of their bones and teeth has allowed scientists to reconstruct complex food chains where life and death were inextricably linked. The fate of these giant herbivores depended entirely on the short, fleeting summer, when the tundra was covered with sparse vegetation. And if we look even further back into the past, to the Eocene epoch, during the latest global warming, we see a picture that seems downright fantastical. It's hard to believe, but dense coniferous and broadleaf forests flourished at the poles of our planet. In these warm and humid conditions, a multitude of small mammals and even primates thrived. Genetic markers extracted from fossil remains tell us this amazing story of how life again and again conquered the most inhospitable corners of the planet. Every fossilized fragment, every bone found by paleontologists tells a story of how life adapted to the harshest conditions on the planet. In-depth analysis of ancient remains reveals astonishing changes in the very structure of prehistoric creatures. Their bones became denser, their teeth changed shape, and their fur thickened. All these physiological transformations were a response to one fundamental challenge: survival. These weren't just random mutations, but true evolutionary armor, allowing them to retain precious warmth and continue hunting even in the dim light of the polar night. Let's move on to the icy waters of the polar seas. Here, giant marine reptiles such as plesiosaurs and their closely related ichthyosaurs reigned supreme. Their world was incredibly diverse, suggesting a complex and well-organized ecosystem. Each life form occupied its own niche. Some of these marine reptiles specialized on fast and agile prey like fish or squid. Others evolved into true apex predators, capable of hunting enormous prey with their crushing jaws and incredibly maneuverable flippers. Fossil evidence found in ancient sedimentary rocks paints a picture of Antarctica as we've never known it. This icy continent was once home to colossal penguins, giant birds of prey, and a host of other flightless species. Local populations developed a host of unique biological adaptations. Their bones were incredibly strong, their feathers provided perfect insulation, and their ability to accumulate a thick layer of fat and a highly efficient metabolism enabled them to survive long periods of famine. Even in freshwater glacial lakes and icebound rivers, life found a way to thrive. Some species of fish, amphibians, insects, and mollusks developed unique mechanisms to survive extreme cold. These mechanisms, known as antifreeze mechanisms, are specialized proteins in the blood that literally prevent the body's cells from freezing. Nature invented its own antifreeze. Animals, such as the prehistoric ancestors of polar bears, Arctic wolves, reindeer, and Arctic foxes, went even further in their adaptations. They learned to alter the length of their life cycles, enter into profound hibernation, and even transform their own anatomy. These amazing adaptations allowed them to survive in a world of perpetual cold. Fossil studies and genetic analysis show that the evolution of these traits was not smooth and gradual. It occurred in leaps and bounds, closely intertwined with abrupt climate changes, great migrations, and the colonization of new continents. Today, observing modern polar animals, we see how these ancient adaptive strategies have not only been preserved, but are continuing to evolve. Studying the genomes of these creatures has allowed scientists to gain insight into the very essence of their survival. Specific genetic mutations have been discovered that are responsible for fat metabolism, thermoregulation, seasonal fur change, and even the body's internal clock, circadian rhythms, which help the animals adapt to dramatically changing light conditions. Each such discovery contributes to a deeper understanding of the mechanisms of evolution and adaptation, which, in turn, provides invaluable knowledge for preserving our planet's unique biodiversity in an era of global climate change. There are stories that stir the imagination and blur the line between reality and myth. For over a century, the legend of the so-called City of Giants, hidden somewhere in the inaccessible depths of the Grand Canyon, has been passed down by word of mouth. It all began in 1909, when an explorer named Henry Kincaid claimed to have discovered the entrance to a vast cave system located high on a sheer cliff face. Descending into the mouth of this cave, Kincaid, by his own description, discovered something incredible: a labyrinth of tunnels and man-made underground chambers extending hundreds of meters into the rock. He claimed to have stumbled upon several mummies in this mysterious city, many times larger than the average person. Each mummy was shrouded in dark cloth and seated on a massive stone throne in a pose reminiscent of deep meditation. Furthermore, according to the researcher, numerous copper artifacts and stone slabs inscribed with unknown writings were found in this underground complex. The hieroglyphs, according to the descriptions, resembled Egyptian ones, and the stone sculptures, depicting figures in meditative poses holding lotus flowers, evoked associations with Buddhist art. Kincaid's notes indicated that all these artifacts were made in a mixed style, making it virtually impossible to determine their cultural affiliation. Some objects were reminiscent of ancient Egyptian metalworking techniques, while others suggested the technologies of ancient Asian civilizations. Even the inscribed stone tablets, allegedly collected by Kincaid, remained unclear as to their origin and meaning. However, the most astonishing element of this story remains the mummies themselves, said to be over 2.5 meters tall. These silent giants, towering in the dark halls of the underground city, create an indescribable atmosphere of mystery and mysticism. The Arizona Gazette reported at the time that the expedition was allegedly supported by the Smithsonian Institution, one of America's most respected research centers. However, critics are convinced that the entire story was nothing more than a journalistic invention or the product of conspiracy theories. Subsequently, not a single reliable document about the City of Giants was found, and the Smithsonian itself never officially confirmed such a discovery. The complete lack of archaeological evidence and limited access to that area of the Grand Canyon only fueled skepticism surrounding this legend. Because of these unconfirmed reports, the story of the City of Giants remains a field for boundless speculation. It could be a modern myth, a newspaper hoax, or perhaps the only key to understanding a civilization that once flourished and then vanished without a trace beneath the surface of North America. To this day, all versions remain mere hypotheses. The questions surrounding this story continue to generate heated debate and leave enormous gaps in the region's archaeological record. Let's travel to Colombia, to a mysterious place called Monte Parda. This mountain has become a true mecca not only for archaeologists, but also for those seeking the unexplained. Located near the city of Bogota, this peak is famous for its regular sightings of unidentified lights in the night sky. Every week, dozens of research groups and local residents gather here to witness luminous objects silently moving above the mountain peaks. This phenomenon has yet to be explained in any clear way, either physically or meteorologically. Despite numerous videos recorded using state-of-the-art equipment, the mystery remains. Historically, this mountain was closely associated with the Muisca people, an indigenous community that inhabited this region for millennia. According to archaeological evidence and oral traditions, the Muisca considered this mountain their primary spiritual center, a place of power where important rituals and ceremonies were performed. Religious rituals, including sacrifices, were an integral part of the lives of the local population. Archaeological finds and historical records confirm that such rituals were intended to maintain public order and protect the tribe from external threats. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the region, many community members, unwilling to submit to the conquerors, chose to commit suicide to preserve their collective honor. This led to a chain of tragic events that had a colossal psychological and cultural impact on the entire region. Researchers of anomalous phenomena, such as engineer William Chavis Asa, have devoted decades to observing the area. They have collected a vast array of information on unidentified flying objects, including photographs, videos, and even recordings of invisible radiation. However, there is currently insufficient scientific evidence to confirm the origin of these phenomena. Some theories suggest a connection between the unique geological energy fields of Mount Parda and the frequent appearance of mysterious lights. However, all these hypotheses require further thorough verification through field research and interdisciplinary analysis. Mount Parda is a striking example of how geology, history, culture, and unexplained natural phenomena can intertwine. It is one of the most fascinating sites in South America for archaeological and anomalous research. Remnants of a great indigenous culture have been preserved here, and numerous physical phenomena, the nature of which remains completely unknown, occur here. This opens entirely new horizons for future comprehensive research. Recent breakthroughs in molecular biology have revealed a stunning new secret hidden within ourselves. This is the concept of so-called dark DNA. These are vast segments of our genetic material that are present in the genome, but their specific functions remain completely unclear. Modern sequencing technologies have revealed that only a small portion of the DNA in the human genome directly encodes proteins. The remaining non-coding segments, known as dark DNA, make up the vast majority of our genome. However, their role in regulating genetic activity, stabilizing chromosome structure, and interacting with environmental factors remains a mystery. The existence of dark DNA poses a significant challenge to modern genetics, as its structure and biological significance remain as much of a mystery as dark matter in cosmology. At the same time, archaeological research and the study of ancient symbols reveal that, dating back to ancient Sumer, numerous artifacts and bas-reliefs feature the image of two snakes entwined around a staff. This motif became a symbol of healing in many great civilizations, from Greece to Rome, and has numerous interpretations. It can represent life, eternal rebirth, or even some kind of interference with the transmission of knowledge and vital energy. This symbol can still be seen on modern medical emblems and has attracted keen interest from researchers studying both cultural and biological aspects. The striking similarity between an ancient double helix-like symbol and the recent discovery of dark DNA has given rise to a bold hypothesis about possible external intervention in the evolution of the human species. This idea finds indirect support in the myths and legends of countless ancient civilizations, which tell of the coming of gods or certain bearers of knowledge from the heavens. Some scientists believe that the specific and rather dramatic changes in the human genome that so distinguish us from our closest primate relatives may be the result of such external influence. Let's move to a world where the boundaries between mind and matter are beginning to blur. Imagine the incredible idea. What if our emotions, our stress, and our willpower are capable of influencing the very foundation of life, our DNA? While this theory still awaits irrefutable scientific proof, the latest discoveries in molecular biology are forcing us to consider this possibility in a completely new way. Scientists suggest that powerful psychosocial factors, such as joy or, conversely, chronic stress, can influence the activity of our genetic code. Experiments conducted on people under severe psychological stress have already yielded striking results. It turns out that the structure and function of mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside our cells, change under the influence of emotional state. This, in turn, directly impacts metabolism and immune system strength. The possibility that our mental states can alter DNA continues to be actively studied. This opens the door to a future where medicine will treat not only the body, but also consider a person's living conditions and psychological environment. These discoveries force us to ask fundamental questions about the origins of ancient genetic symbols and the mysterious part of our genome that scientists call dark DNA. Could consciousness be the key that influences our genetic material? A new interdisciplinary field of science is unfolding before us, where archaeology meets genetics and neuroscience. And one of the most striking examples of this astonishing synthesis are the Evans culture mounds. Let's move on to Louisiana, in what is now the United States. Here, amidst swamps and forests, lies a stunning archaeological heritage estimated to be approximately 5,400 years old. Just imagine. These earthworks were erected long before the first pyramids appeared in Egypt, and even before the famous Stonehenge. They are one of the most grandiose prehistoric complexes created by human hands in North America. These mounds were built by the Evans community, a group of hunters and gatherers. It was long believed that such societies could not have complex social structures or organize large-scale labor projects. However, archaeology has proven otherwise. The construction of these gigantic mounds continued uninterrupted for 700 years. This indicates an incredibly stable society, a shared purpose, and collaborative labor passed down from generation to generation. In the deep layers of the burial mounds, archaeologists have discovered countless artifacts, skillfully carved stone beads, bone tools, fish hooks, and many other astonishing finds. These objects, used in everyday life, tell us the story of an economy based entirely on the bounty of nature. But what's astonishing is that the exact purpose of the burial mounds themselves remains a complete mystery. No remains of any structures or traces of mass graves have been found on their summits, giving rise to dozens of theories about their true function. Perhaps these were ceremonial centers where tribes gathered for rituals, or places for communal gatherings where the fate of the community was decided, or perhaps even primitive observatories for observing the stars. But despite the abundance of hypotheses, convincing archaeological evidence that could shed light on the mystery of the construction of these cyclopean structures remains lacking. With each new study, the scale and complexity of these structures only boggles the imagination, as they seem impossible for a society of hunters and gatherers. The mounds of the Evans culture are a silent monument to the incredible social organization, adaptation, and creative genius of the prehistoric peoples of the Americas. From ancient structures, let's move on to myths that still capture the imagination today. Legends of the Yeti, stories of wild people living in the forests, and anthropological mysteries like the story of Zana from Russia. All of this attracts the close attention of scientists from a wide range of fields, from genetics to social anthropology. In the folklore of the peoples living at the foot of the Himalayas, the Yeti is described as a huge humanoid creature. It walks on two legs, its body covered in thick fur, and inhabits the most inaccessible snow-capped mountains and ancient forests. These stories, passed down orally, serve as a reminder of a mysterious past and a source of inspiration for local residents. Giant footprints in the snow, strange sounds heard in the night, and blurred silhouettes spotted on distant slopes are often cited as evidence of the Yeti's existence. Numerous expeditions have been launched in search of physical evidence, but unfortunately, most of the specimens found, clumps of wool, fur, or footprints, were, upon closer inspection, found to belong to well-known local animals, most often the Himalayan brown bear. However, the story of Zana, which took place in the Caucasus Mountains of southern Russia in the 19th century, forces us to look at the connection between legend and reality from a completely different perspective. Discovered in a village, Zana was described as a woman with a unique appearance, very tall, with a body covered in thick hair. She possessed a phenomenal resistance to cold and behaved like a semi-wild creature. A very recent genetic analysis of her descendants revealed that Zana belonged to the species Homo sapiens, meaning she was human. But perhaps she possessed unique traits that arose either as a result of interbreeding with another ancient human species or as a result of long evolution in complete isolation from the rest of the world. This case clearly demonstrates that stories about wild people may not be mere fiction. Their roots may lie in complex genetic and anthropological processes. Perhaps the numerous legends about yetis, wood goblins, and mountain monsters are nothing more than humanity's collective memory of a time when our ancestors coexisted with other unusual groups of people, exploring new territories. To understand these myths, we need to combine knowledge from archaeology, genetics, and evolutionary ecology. Stories about the Yeti may be echoes of ancient memories encoded in our genetic diversity. Now, let's head to Scotland, where in the western county of Dumbartonshire lies one of Europe's most astonishing carved stones, the Cocknow stone. It was created around 5,000 years ago during the Bronze Age. It's a massive boulder, 12 meters long and 7 meters wide. Its entire surface is covered with more than 90 different patterns, including concentric circles, spirals, and completely incomprehensible geometric symbols. The discovery of this stone in 1887 caused a real stir in the scientific world. The ancient inhabitants of Scotland left a cryptic message on the Cocknow stone that remains undecipherable. These patterns have no parallel in any known symbol system or language that ever existed in this region. Most of the images are an intricate web of intersecting lines, deep grooves, and dots. Archaeologists note that some motifs are reminiscent of prehistoric cave paintings from other parts of Europe, but the complexity and scale of the Cocknow stone patterns are considered absolutely exceptional for that era. To date, scholars have disagreed on the purpose of this stone. Some suggest that the slab may have served as a primitive astronomical map for tracking the movements of celestial bodies. Others believe it was a ritual site for religious ceremonies. Still others believe the stone served as a territorial marker, delineating the boundaries of the ancient community's holdings. However, none of these hypotheses is convincingly supported by archaeological evidence. In 1965, the stone had to be deliberately buried to protect it from vandals and the ravages of the weather. It wasn't until 2015 that a team of archaeologists from the University of Glasgow rediscovered it to meticulously document each design using modern 3D scanning technology. This discovery allowed us to gain a deeper understanding of these symbols, but it didn't bring us any closer to unraveling their meaning. Today, the Cocknow stone is a symbol of ancient art and one of Scotland's greatest archaeological mysteries. Our journey continues into South Asia. Here, in the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh, lies Nagarjunakonda, one of the most important Buddhist archaeological sites. From the 1st to 3rd centuries CE, this territory was the center of the powerful Ikshvaku kingdom, which played a key role in the spread of Buddhism throughout southern India. Since the 20th century, archaeologists have uncovered numerous ruins of ancient temples, monasteries, and sacred stupas. Thousands of inscriptions, sculptures, and various religious artifacts have been found, revealing the daily lives of ancient Buddhist monastic communities. Archaeological research has revealed that many buildings and artifacts in Nagarjunakonda bear the hallmarks of early Buddhist art. Particularly notable are the giant stupas, monumental structures that once housed sacred relics and objects of worship. Hundreds of inscriptions in Sanskrit and Pali have also been discovered, recounting the history of these sites. These ancient stones tell us of events from long ago, of great construction projects, of the deeds of kings and ordinary people. And this evidence paints a striking picture. The Nagarjunakonda Valley was once not just a settlement, but the true heart of the Buddhist world, an international center of faith. Imagine this place, a vibrant crossroads of cultures where pilgrims and missionary delegations flocked from the most remote corners of South and Southeast Asia. Moreover, the artifacts discovered even hint at trade and cultural ties with the distant Mediterranean. The name of this place is inextricably linked with the greatest Buddhist thinker, Nagarjuna, the founder of the Madhyamaka school of philosophy and forever changed the course of Mahayana Buddhist thought. Although historians lack definitive proof that Nagarjuna himself lived or taught here, countless legends and ancient texts have woven his name into the history of this city. This gave it a special sacred status in the eyes of subsequent generations of Buddhists. But in the mid-20th century, the history of this place took a tragic turn. During the construction of the gigantic Gorjuna Sagar Dam, the entire ancient valley was doomed and forever disappeared beneath the waters of the new reservoir. Most of the most valuable monuments were saved. They were carefully transported and recreated on a large island in the lake, while thousands of artifacts were sent to museums. Now, Nagarjunakonda serves as a vivid and tragic example of how progress and large-scale projects can collide with priceless archaeological heritage, forever changing the cultural landscape of the planet. Now let's move to the coast of the Kata Peninsula, where, beneath centuries-old layers of sand and rock, archaeological expeditions uncovered a true mystery, a buried architectural complex that no one suspected existed. Remains of ancient dwellings, massive foundations of once majestic buildings, and scattered building materials emerged from beneath the sand. Even the first excavations revealed that this was more than just a lost fishing village. The scale of the discovery indicated that these were the ruins of a large and significant settlement. Further research would shed light on the city itself and its role in the history of this turbulent region. Ancient texts suggested the answer. At the beginning of the Common Era, this place was known as Tuam. For centuries, it was a key player in the maritime trade of the Persian Gulf. Its strategic location at the intersection of major caravan and sea routes transformed Tuam into a thriving trading hub, linking it with the wealthiest ports of the Mediterranean and the distant Indian Ocean. However, the most grisly and significant discovery lay ahead. Throughout the settlement, they discovered several mass graves. These mass graves were extremely unusual, their structure clearly deviating from all known burial rituals, which immediately led the scientists to suspect some terrible tragedy. In many graves, the remains were severely damaged, leaving researchers puzzled over the cause of their deaths. The vast majority of the skeletons found belonged to young people, full of vigor and vitality. But here's what was strange. Their bones bore no marks of swords, no signs of violence or accident. It was as if an invisible and merciless enemy had ended their lives at once. They all died at practically the same time. Radiocarbon dating and genetic dating have settled this question, pinpointing the precise time of the tragedy. It was the mid-6th century AD. This date, like a key to a lock, coincided perfectly with one of the most horrific events in human history, the peak of the Justinian plague, a pandemic that decimated entire regions from the Middle East to the Mediterranean. Other evidence obtained in Tuam confirmed this dire conjecture. Archaeologists documented a sudden and complete collapse of local trade. This is supported by the finds of abandoned goods, pearls, imported coins, and numerous unfinished buildings abandoned in haste. Local oral traditions, passed down from generation to generation, have for centuries told of a mysterious epidemic that forced people to flee their land, turning a flourishing city into a dead ruin. Having pieced together all the evidence, archaeological, biological, and historical descriptions of the plague of Justinian, scientists have come to a clear conclusion. This epidemic was the cause of the deaths of thousands of people in the region. Tuam, as a major trading port, became a gateway for the disease, which arrived on ships from Egypt and Byzantium. These findings, mass graves, a predominance of young victims, and a precise coincidence with the ancient pandemic represent a classic, chilling example of how an invisible enemy could completely reshape the social structure and decide the fate of entire civilizations in the Middle East. Our journey now takes us to Mexico, to the region of Guanajuato, home to the archaeological site of Cañada de la Virgen. This site is a living reflection of how the Otomi people built their new world after the fall of the great Teotihuacan civilization. Recent excavations have confirmed that this city arose in the 6th century, literally on the ashes of the collapsed Teotihuacan Empire, which for centuries had been the most powerful center in all of central Mexico. This historical context paints a dramatic picture of a massive migration. An entire group of survivors moved north and founded an entirely new community, known to us as Cañada de la Virgen. The urban structure of this settlement is striking in its sophistication. It was a meticulously planned complex, including palaces for the nobility, residential quarters, administrative buildings, and even a complex system of irrigation canals for agriculture. This unique monument demonstrates how the settlers carefully preserved the traditions of their ancestral homeland. The spatial organization of the city, ritual practices, and architectural styles were clearly inherited from the great Teotihuacan. Archaeologists have found clear evidence of characteristic stonework and ritual objects associated with the worship of the moon, the sun, and Venus, all of which precisely corresponds to the religious and astronomical traditions of the fallen empire. However, unfortunately, our knowledge of the Otomi society in this area remains very limited. The city of Cañada de la Virgen flourished for approximately 400 years. Then, in the early 10th century, it was completely abandoned for unexplained reasons. Modern researchers have put forward various hypotheses. Perhaps abrupt climate changes, internal strife, or pressure from hostile tribes were to blame. But definitive evidence that fully explains this collapse remains lacking. Until recently, the city's ruins were located on private property and only recently became accessible for full study. These discoveries open new horizons in our understanding of migration processes, the role of the Otomi people in Mesoamerican history, and the complex connections between the great ancient civilizations. The image of the Vesuvius eruption is familiar to everyone, a fiery inferno that engulfed the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, leaving no chance of salvation. We're accustomed to thinking that all their inhabitants perished on that terrible day, but what if this story is only part of the truth? Recent discoveries are forcing us to completely rewrite this tragic chapter of history. Anthropological research, analysis of ancient texts, and material evidence paint a far more complex and hopeful picture. The fact is that the number of skeletons found in layers of solidified ash represents only a tiny fraction of the total population recorded in administrative documents, tombstones, and citizen lists from the Roman era. Where did the rest go? Excavations in other coastal Roman cities have uncovered records of entire groups of settlers whose names and origins directly point to Pompeii and Herculaneum. It turns out that some families managed to escape and re-establish their communities in Ostia, Cumae, and even in more remote regions of central Italy and Sicily. The inscriptions on the stones tell a remarkable story. These survivors not only continued to live, but actively engaged in the socio-economic and religious life of their new homes. Among these families was the noble Calcili. They built new temples, became members of city councils, and left their mark on local archives and real estate transactions. They did not forget their roots and continued to preserve the traditions of Pompeii in their new environment. These findings, combined with other archaeological finds, abandoned horse-drawn carts, personal belongings, and coins found along escape routes, led researchers to conclude that a significant portion of the inhabitants of Pompeii and Herculaneum managed to flee their homes before the volcano delivered its final fatal blow. Other groups sought safety at sea, heading for ports in the Gulf of Naples. This unique synthesis of archaeological, textual, and material sources completely refutes the previous notion that Pompeii and Herculaneum were wiped off the map along with their entire population. Although both cities were destroyed, the legacy of their inhabitants lived on in Roman culture for many generations. This discovery offers new insights into the resilience, flexibility, and survival strategies of ancient societies facing one of the most devastating natural disasters in history. In the misty lands of England, there lies a place shrouded in legend, a ruin known as the Lost Monastery. More than just a pile of stones, this site is linked to the life of one of the most renowned religious figures of his time and one of England's great historical figures. According to archaeological evidence, it has a special connection to the reign of Queen Senedrid, the powerful wife of King Offa of Mercia, who lived in the 8th century. After her husband's death, she took an action unthinkable for her time. She renounced power and public life to live in seclusion within the walls of this monastery. This move became symbolic of an entire era, a period of transition, both in the struggle for power and in the changing role of women in the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy. Excavations conducted by the University of Reading have lifted the veil of mystery. Scientists have discovered the foundations of ancient wooden structures, stone floors, traces of chapels, and objects associated with monastic life. However, time has been merciless. Much of the monastery's architecture has been completely razed, and today we can only see layers of sedimentary rock and barely visible ruins. This makes it extremely difficult to determine the exact scale and layout of this once magnificent structure. Written sources that could tell us about the life and functions of the monastery are extremely scarce. Almost no original documents that detail its history have survived, as if time deliberately sought to conceal its secrets. Images of the past don't always retain their vividness. Let's move on to the world of paleontology, where once world-famous excavation sites gradually fade into obscurity, giving way to new, more sensational discoveries. Imagine a famous site where the first great discoveries were made, but over time, its glory has begun to fade. New expeditions become less frequent, funding dries up, and the once vibrant scientific life here gradually fades. However, this doesn't mean the Earth has ceased to hold its secrets. For true historians of the planet and passionate archaeologists, such places remain objects of intense interest. Every layer of rock here is a priceless document, capable of revealing details of climate change, the rise and fall of entire ecosystems, and the dramatic processes that shaped life on Earth long before the advent of humans. Let's take a break from the fading centers of science and turn our gaze to those who were the true gods of the ancient world. Etruscan and Roman mythology featured deities responsible for the cleanliness and order of cities. But in prehistory, these all-powerful forces weren't imaginary entities, but rather real creatures of flesh and blood. Meet the true ruler of the Cretaceous river systems, the Spinosaurus, or Spinosaurus aegyptiacus. This creature was the living embodiment of the deity of rivers and swamps, a symbol of absolute dominance over the water. Its figure, crowned with a gigantic bony sail on its back, inspired terror in all living things. This lizard was more than just a predator. It was an engineering pinnacle of evolution, perfectly adapted to life on the border between two worlds, land and water. His hunting system and his ability to control entire river valleys made him a key figure, maintaining balance in this part of the ancient world. The cult of this river tyrant was based not on faith, but on fear. His every appearance on the surface of the water was a ritual act, signifying life for him and inevitable death for his victims. Paleontological finds, enormous claws, conical teeth, fragments of vertebrae, are more than just fossils. They are artifacts testifying to the power of this ancient deity, who held vast territories under his control. Now let's move on to another place, to Greece, where, beneath the streets of modern-day Athens, construction workers stumbled upon a sinister secret of the past, a mass grave. This discovery rocked the scientific world. archaeologists were confronted with a horrific scene. Approximately 80 skeletons, their hands cuffed in iron shackles. Most of the dead were young, strong men, their bones bearing no trace of disease or exhaustion. They were apparently in full vigor at the moment of their death. The poses in which their bodies were frozen left no doubt this was not a mass grave of fallen warriors, but the site of a brutal mass execution. Many lay on their backs, with their hands behind their heads, as if they had been forced to their knees and summarily executed. Radiocarbon dating took us back to the 6th century BC, a turbulent time for Athens, an era of bloody power struggles between aristocratic clans and those who yearned for change. History has preserved the memory of one of the most notorious events of those years, the failed coup d'état led by an aristocrat named Cylon. This Olympic champion attempted to seize power, but his rebellion was brutally suppressed. Cylon himself managed to escape, but his supporters suffered a terrible fate. They were captured and mercilessly executed. The bones discovered in Phaleron are most likely those unfortunate rebels whose attempt to change history ended in a mass grave. Chemical analysis of the bones revealed that they were not slaves or criminals. They were free citizens, young and hopeful, who risked everything for their convictions. This mass grave stands as a silent witness to the brutal methods by which democracy was born and the price sometimes paid for challenging authority. Let's leave the tragedies of human history and return to a world where titans ruled. Among the many paleontological mysteries, the legend of the mysterious metal plateau called orichalcum stands out. The philosopher described it as the main building material of the legendary Atlantis, a metal valued more than silver but second only to gold. For centuries, orichalcum was considered nothing more than a beautiful invention, a myth. But what if there was something real behind this legend? In 2015, underwater archaeologists off the coast of Sicily made a discovery that left the world breathless. Aboard a sunken ship, more than 2,500 years old, they discovered 47 metal ingots. When scientists conducted a spectral analysis, they were in for a surprise. The alloy consisted primarily of copper and zinc, with traces of nickel, lead, and iron. This was no ordinary brass. The unique balance of metals gave the alloy an incredible golden sheen and unique physical properties. This was orichalcum. The discovery proved that ancient metallurgists possessed technologies we can barely imagine. They knew how to create alloys with predetermined characteristics, and these alloys were incredibly valuable. Historical documents confirm that orichalcum was used to mint special coins and create luxury goods. Its value was so great that dishonest merchants and even officials sometimes passed it off as pure gold, perpetrating grandiose financial scams. And although scientists now know the chemical composition of orichalcum, no one has yet succeeded in recreating it exactly or replicating the ancient smelting technology. The mystery of this metal, born in the depths of ancient history and celebrated in the legend of Atlantis, continues to captivate researchers, reminding us how much we still don't know about the technological breakthroughs of ancient civilizations. But the most astonishing discovery awaited us elsewhere. In 1991, during excavations at an ancient Roman cemetery, archaeologists stumbled upon something extraordinary. They discovered a skeleton whose dimensions seemed utterly impossible. It far exceeded anything they had ever seen before. A thorough examination revealed that the remains belonged to a man who lived in the 3rd century AD. But most importantly, his height. In life, this man stood approximately 2 meters and 30 centimeters tall. To put this into perspective, the average height of a man in the Roman Empire was barely 1 meter 65 centimeters. This man was a true giant, a giant among ordinary men, a living myth straight out of the pages of ancient legends. When paleontologists and anthropologists study the remains of bygone eras, they sometimes stumble upon something that completely upends our understanding of the past. A skeleton was discovered in ancient burial sites dating back to the Roman Empire that defied all notions about the limits of the human body. A detailed study revealed that this individual suffered from a rare condition, gigantism. His pituitary gland, a tiny gland at the base of his brain, malfunctioned, releasing abnormal amounts of growth hormone into the bloodstream. Evidence of this is visible to the naked eye. Analysis of the skull revealed a traumatic injury, which scientists directly link to a tumor pressing on this very gland. And the bones of his limbs, they were unnaturally elongated, disproportionate, as if nature, in some mad experiment, was trying to understand just how big a human could become. This discovery caused a real storm in the scientific community. Was this simply a tragic accident, a unique genetic mutation lost to the ages? Or, far more intriguing, could entire tribes of giants have existed in ancient Europe, about whom we still know nothing? To date, alas, there is no archaeological evidence that entire nations of giants once roamed the area around Rome. And so, this skeleton remains a unique, silent witness to an incredible biological failure that occurred thousands of years ago. It opens new horizons in the study of ancient pathologies and enriches our understanding of how diverse our ancestral populations may have been. Now let's move to the forested mountains of Washington State, where one of the most intriguing modern legends was born. Here, far from civilization, lies a mystery known as the bottomless pit. The story became famous thanks to a certain Mel Waters, who told the world the incredible tale on a late-night radio show at the end of the 20th century. According to him, a chasm had opened up on his land, and it simply had no bottom. According to legend, the depths of this pit conceal evidence of something otherworldly. Mel Waters, the owner of the property, swore he'd tried to measure its depth. He'd lowered dozens of kilometers of fishing line into the blackness, but he couldn't find the bottom. Any objects he'd dropped into the abyss vanished forever, without a sound or trace, which only fueled interest in this geological phenomenon. Since the story first aired, the bottomless pit has become a magnet for paranormal researchers and major media outlets across America. Rumors soon began to circulate that the US government had urgently seized control of the area, completely restricting access to ordinary citizens, allegedly for the construction of a secret facility. Local residents began reporting strange events. They observed unidentified flying objects, mysterious lights in the sky, and even spoke of mysterious disappearances. Theories about possible alien activity, secret military developments, or connections to other mystical phenomena only added to the pit's aura of mystery. However, the scientific world views this story with great skepticism. Geologists unanimously declare that a true bottomless pit is physically impossible. It contradicts all modern understanding of the structure of the Earth's crust. They argue that such a deep, bottomless cavity would inevitably collapse under the weight of the upper layers, quickly filling with rock debris or groundwater. Experts also emphasize that, despite all the searching, no verifiable evidence of Waters' existence or the exact location of the pit has been found in any state land maps or property deeds. Some researchers believe the legend may have originated from very real objects, old abandoned mines, deep wells, or exploratory pits. Such places have always captured the imagination. Stories passed down orally over time acquired incredible details and evolved into a modern folk myth, reflecting humanity's unquenchable curiosity about the mysteries of nature. The legend of the bottomless pit is a striking example of how modern folklore and the media intertwine to explain unusual phenomena. And although there is no convincing physical evidence, this theme remains incredibly popular, pushing the boundaries between science and myth. High in the Peruvian Andes, at an altitude of over 4,000 meters above sea level, lies the Marahuasi Plateau, renowned for its unique stone formations. Since the mid-20th century, archaeologists and geologists have discovered countless stones here, remarkably reminiscent of human figures, various animals, and mysterious unidentified symbols. Some of these stone sculptures rise tens of meters, creating a truly fantastical geological complex against the backdrop of the rugged mountain landscape. research has shown that the shapes of these rock structures cannot always be explained by the general laws of natural weathering. Some experts have even tentatively suggested human intervention, but most geologists are inclined to believe that these bizarre shapes arose as a result of climate change, erosion, and other geological processes over millions of years. To date, no convincing archaeological evidence has been found that ancient civilizations had any influence on the formation of these rocks. Beyond scientific hypotheses, Marawaci has become the center of speculation about the possible existence of unknown creatures. Some observers have reported traces of tiny tombs and passages no more than a meter high. This has raised the question, could creatures much smaller than modern humans once inhabit this region? Others have advanced even more daring theories, suggesting that the site may be associated with non-human beings or even extraterrestrial phenomena. So far, none of these hypotheses have been scientifically confirmed. Nevertheless, Marawaci continues to attract the attention of specialists from a wide range of fields: geology, archaeology, and anthropology. This region serves as a striking example of the boundless diversity of landscape forms and expands our understanding of the ancient history of our planet. In the icy lands of North America, the legends of the Algonquin people hold the memory of a monster born of cold and despair. His name is Chuchin. More than just a monster, he is a terrifying symbol of the interplay between harsh nature and ancient myths about the transformation of man in a desperate struggle for survival. According to legend, Chuchin was once an ordinary man, but driven mad by hunger or succumbed to the influence of dark supernatural forces, he transformed into a terrifying carnivorous creature. Locals believed this metamorphosis was the result of terrible psychological and social stress, when a person is forced to transgress all moral boundaries in a situation of extreme poverty. Chuchin's appearance reflects his monstrous nature. His physical features are exaggerated, and his main, bizarre ability is to increase in size depending on his hunger. These images embody the primal fear of losing control of one's own instincts and demonstrate the profound impact cold has on the human body. In its monstrous form, Chuchin cannot tolerate normal heat. It can exist only in conditions of perpetual cold and ice, becoming a symbol of radical biological adaptation to the harsh climate of ancient North America. Traditional methods of destroying the monster, breaking its icy heart with salt or forcing it to vomit what it has eaten, hold deep symbolic significance. The heart was considered the center of life, and salt, according to belief, disrupted the creature's physiological balance. Vomiting, meanwhile, was a metaphor for cleansing itself of all abnormality. These details highlight the close connection between early scientific understanding and indigenous beliefs. Culturally, the legend of Chuchin serves as a stern warning of moral boundaries and the devastating consequences that await those who violate social laws. Belief in this creature strongly influenced the daily lives of the Algonquins and their interactions with nature. This story helped explain phenomena such as famine, violence, and psychological breakdowns. How do great civilizations perish? Sometimes the answer lies not in the ruins of cities, but at the bottom of ancient lakes, beneath thick layers of silt. Archaeologists studying the mystery of the Mayan Empire's disappearance have focused their attention on analyzing the biological and environmental traces preserved in the sediments of lakes and rivers in Central America. Scientists have discovered that organic matter accumulated for millennia at the bottom of reservoirs near Guatemala. By extracting cores, long cylinders of sedimentary rock, they were able, as if reading an ancient chronicle, to trace the rise and decline of the Mayan civilization over the centuries. A key research method focuses on identifying specific chemical compounds formed during human digestion. These molecules can be identified with high accuracy in sedimentary layers accumulated over very long periods of time. By tracking changes in the concentration of these substances in different rock layers, scientists gain a unique insight into past demographic processes. Here, in the depths of history, exist ecosystems that lived and breathed in their own long-gone eras. To peer into this past, scientists turn to an unexpected witness: sediments that have accumulated over centuries at the bottom of lakes. This silent archive, layer after layer, tells us of the rise and fall of entire nations. By analyzing the chemical composition of this ancient silt, researchers can reconstruct a picture of the past with astonishing accuracy, as if watching an old film. We see how, during certain eras, the sediments become saturated with organic matter, a sure sign that life was thriving, the population was thriving, and people were actively exploiting nature's bounty. But then, the picture changes dramatically. Sudden gaps in this record of life always coincide with other far more ominous signs imprinted within the same layers. Evidence appears of severe droughts, when rain ceased for long years, water levels dropped, and great agricultural civilizations that had fed entire cities began to collapse. And this isn't just speculation. Chemical analysis is supported by other evidence. Thin layers of ash indicate massive fires that scorched entire regions. Charred plant remains and dramatic changes in pollen composition paint a picture of ecological catastrophe. During these great droughts, fertile lands turned to dust and water sources dried up. People faced a terrible choice: starve to death or abandon their homes and cities in search of more fertile lands. Each such decline became a catalyst for social upheaval. Deprived of resources, societies plunged into chaos. Internal conflicts erupted, and cities fought each other over the last drop of water and handful of grain. Ultimately, this chain reaction led to the complete collapse of once mighty civilizations. The collapse of the centralized power of the Mayan civilization was one of the most dramatic events in the history of Central America, and here, the lake silt gave scientists a real surprise. When researchers reached layers dating to the late 15th century, the time of the Spanish invasion, they saw something astonishing. A sharp increase in organic remains indicated a monstrous population density. It was a wave of despair. Thousands of refugees fleeing genocide and bloody conflicts poured into these areas as the conquistadors advanced inland with fire and sword. Neither traditional archaeological excavations nor the sparse records of Spanish colonizers could tell us about this tragedy. For the first time, modern science has obtained irrefutable, albeit indirect, evidence of this great exodus of the Maya people. It has become clear their civilization did not collapse due to a single catastrophe. It was a deadly cocktail of multiple factors: extreme climate shocks, the complete depletion of natural resources, social crisis, and finally, the invasion of ruthless foreigners. By combining data from lake sediments, archaeological finds, and historical documents, scientists have been able to unravel the mystery of the demise of a civilization that flourished for thousands of years in the heart of the Americas. Now, let's travel to the other side of the world, to the dense and humid jungles of Indonesia, on the island of Kalimantan. It was here, amidst centuries-old greenery, that archaeologists stumbled upon a discovery that would rewrite the entire history of medicine. Before them lay a human skeleton, a staggering 31,000 years old, but the most incredible thing wasn't its antiquity. The remains bore clear evidence of a complex surgical procedure, the amputation of a left leg performed in the Stone Age. A careful examination of the bone shocked the scientists. The cut had been incredibly precise, and the edges of the bone showed signs of complete healing. This meant one thing: the man had not only survived the surgery, but had lived for many years afterward. This was the earliest evidence of surgical limb removal ever found in human history. Analysis showed that it was not the result of some random injury or animal attack. No, it was a deliberate, carefully planned and controlled medical intervention carried out tens of thousands of years before science believed it was possible. Before this incredible discovery, scientists were convinced that complex surgery only emerged with the emergence of settled agricultural societies after the so-called Neolithic Revolution, approximately 10,000 years ago. but this jungle skeleton completely disproved this theory. It turns out that ancient humans possessed the skills to perform complex surgeries long before they began building cities and cultivating fields. These remains from Southeast Asia prove that even in the harsh prehistoric world, among hunters and gatherers, advanced medical knowledge and even methods for combating post-operative infections existed. A detailed study of the burial site revealed that this was no random interment. The body had been carefully prepared for its passage to the next world. This, in turn, suggests the existence of a close-knit community that did not abandon its fellow tribesmen in times of need, but cared for the seriously wounded, giving them a chance at life. This discovery opens entirely new horizons in the study of prehistory. It sheds light on the history of medicine and reveals how inventive and compassionate our distant ancestors were, adapting to the harsh realities of their world. Researchers continue their work, trying to understand what tools and knowledge enabled these ancient surgeons to perform true miracles. Let's fast forward to another era, to medieval Europe. The rapid growth of cities gave rise to a new, terrible problem. In the labyrinth of narrow, filthy streets, amidst refuse and sewage, an invisible and deadly enemy bred: hordes of rats. It was during this dark time that one of the most thankless yet vital professions was born: the rat catcher. It was a necessary measure in the desperate fight against the spread of terrible diseases, especially during monstrous epidemics such as the Black Death, which decimated a third of Europe in the 14th century. Typically, people from the lowest strata of society were hired for this dangerous job. Risking their lives, they caught and exterminated hordes of rodents, receiving a modest fee from homeowners, merchants, or city officials. Their arsenal was simple but effective: mechanical traps, poisoned bait, and specially trained rat-hunting dogs and ferrets. These grim specialists didn't just control the pest population. They served as a kind of early warning system. If the rat catchers noticed a mass rodent die-off, it was a sure sign of an approaching epidemic. Centuries passed. In the 19th century, with the advent of industrialization, European cities changed beyond recognition, and the rat catcher's profession also underwent a transformation. From a solitary artisan, he became an employee of a professional service provided by entire pest control companies. Dogs and traps were replaced by new scientific methods, biological and chemical. This evolution went hand in hand with advances in medicine, when scientists finally unraveled the deadly connection between rats, fleas, and the spread of the plague. By the early 20th century, traditional rat hunting methods had finally given way to the modern pest control industry. Strict sanitary standards were developed, powerful chemicals were created, and in-depth research into rodent life cycles was conducted. This made it possible not only to combat an existing threat, but also to prevent its emergence. Thus, the humble and despised profession of the medieval rat catcher laid the foundations for modern public health and environmental health. The role of these anonymous heroes, never truly appreciated in their time, has become an integral part of our safe world, protecting human health and the safety of food supplies. This is the remarkable story of how a grim craft, born out of desperation, became a vital element in protecting the entire society. Human history is not a straight, smooth road. It is, rather, a turbulent river with many forks and unexpected turns. Over the millennia, there have been key moments, tiny instants that nearly altered the course of history beyond recognition. We have witnessed flashes of light that balanced on the razor's edge between radical transformations and the preservation of the familiar order of things. The world's chronicles record many such moments that could have turned history back, but ultimately remained mere missed opportunities. The most striking example is the failed assassination attempt on Adolf Hitler on July 20th, 1944. Consider what would have happened if that plot had succeeded. The Nazi leadership could have been overthrown before the end of World War II. This would have completely changed the political map of post-war Europe and the entire world. A similar incident occurred in Russian history. The assassination attempt on Vladimir Lenin in 1918 failed, allowing him to continue to lead the Soviet government, lay the foundations for the creation of the Soviet Union, and shape the entire geopolitical landscape of the 20th century. Had Lenin been eliminated at that critical moment, history might have taken a completely different course. Perhaps the Soviet Union would never have emerged, or would have emerged in a completely different, unrecognizable form. Stalin's rise to power, the Great Terror, and the global upheavals that followed might never have happened. Another event that marked a turning point in history was the defeat of Napoleon's army during his Russian campaign of 1812. Imagine for a moment that the outcome of this campaign had been different. The entire face of 19th century Europe could have been completely different. The defeat of the French forces put an end to Napoleon's dream of dominance over the continent and allowed the old monarchies to restore the old order at the Congress of Vienna. But had Napoleon won, the entire chain of events that ultimately led to the First and Second World Wars might simply have never happened, or might have unfolded in a completely unpredictable way. Another turning point occurred at the dawn of the Common Era. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in the year 9, where 3 elite Roman legions were completely annihilated by the Germanic tribes. This crushing defeat forever halted Rome's advance into Germany and the process of Romanization. History is full of such events that could have turned everything upside down, and the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest is one of them. Had the Romans won, it could have radically altered the development of European states, their legal systems, languages, and even social structures. However, it's not only wars and political conspiracies that shape the course of history. The Black Death, a plague pandemic that killed nearly a third of Europe's population in the 14th century, also marked a turning point, triggering colossal socio-economic upheavals. But even if the death toll had been even higher, or the pandemic had dragged on, it still wouldn't have been enough to completely halt the continent's development. The world map as we know it might have looked different due to catastrophic famines, economic collapses, and near catastrophes. Each such event is a scar on history, a reminder of how fragile our world can be. Let's travel back in time and imagine how just one moment, one different decision, could have set the course of world history on a completely different course. Such turning points, where the fate of civilizations hung in the balance, have occurred many times. By studying these events, which nearly rewrote our past, we begin to understand more deeply how fragile and unpredictable humanity's path can be, how powerfully chance and coincidence shape our reality. Analyzing such moments reveals that progress is not a straight line, but rather a tangled web, where everything depends on the decisions of a single individual, the vagaries of climate, sudden epidemics, or completely unforeseen events. And while we can only speculate about alternative scenarios, these hypotheses help us better understand the forces that have driven history forward. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals reigned supreme across Europe and Western Asia. They were the masters of this land. But about 40,000 years ago, their trace in history ended. They vanished forever. The causes of this great extinction still spark heated debate in the scientific community, but recent discoveries shed light on one of the key factors behind their tragic end: weapons technology. Imagine the scene of that time. 2 branches of humanity, Neanderthals and our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, shared the same world. Scientists, having studied weapons found at ancient sites, discovered a striking difference. While Homo sapiens had already invented projectile weapons, spears and arrows capable of striking targets at great distances, their neighbors on the planet still relied on brute force. Neanderthals used massive, short spears designed for close combat. Their hunting required incredible courage and physical strength, as they had to get close to their prey or enemy, engaging in lethal contact. The advent of ranged weapons was a true revolution. For Homo sapiens, it was like jumping from a horse to a fighter jet. This technological superiority changed everything. Not only did it make hunting vastly more efficient and safer, but it also gave them a decisive advantage in defending their territories and confronting competitors. In the brutal struggle for resources and living space, where only the strongest survived, this advantage proved fatal. Armed to the teeth with modern weaponry, Homo sapiens began slowly but inexorably displacing the Neanderthals from their ancestral lands, condemning them to starvation and gradual extinction. Genetic analysis of modern humans reveals that a tiny ghost of the past still lingers in our DNA, a small percentage of Neanderthal genes. This suggests that our ancestors occasionally interbred with them before they finally vanished into oblivion. But this fact only underscores the tragedy. It was not climate or disease that played a decisive role in their fate, but technology. Hunting and warfare tools altered the very course of evolution and hastened the fall of an entire species of intelligent beings. Further study of these ancient artifacts remains key to understanding the brutal drama that unfolded at the dawn of humanity. Among the most mysterious and controversial discoveries in the history of archaeology, the so-called Star Child skull occupies a special place. This story began in the 1930s in Mexico, when a completely anomalous skull was discovered in an abandoned mining cave next to an ordinary human skeleton. The find was transported to the United States, where it became the subject of intense study for many years by both scientists and proponents of extraterrestrial civilizations. The skull earned its resounding name due to a number of unusual features that seemed completely unhuman. Imagine a huge, unnaturally bloated cranium, a nearly perfect spherical shape at the top, a prominent forehead, and a completely flat base. Furthermore, it completely lacked frontal sinuses, and the cranial sutures appeared abnormal. The first researchers were astonished. The brain capacity of this creature significantly exceeded the norm for a child of its age. This gave rise to a wave of daring hypotheses. Some seriously claimed that the skull of a human-alien hybrid had been found in the mountains of Mexico. However, when modern science took hold, the mystery began to unravel. Genetic analysis and medical examinations laid the foundations for the mystery. Scientists determined that the skull belonged to a human child, approximately 5 years old, who suffered from a host of severe congenital conditions that resulted in monstrous bone deformities. These anomalies could have been the result of hydrocephalus, a condition in which fluid accumulates in the brain, causing enormous intracranial pressure and disrupting normal skeletal development. Underdeveloped sinuses and a flattened skull base are also common in rare genetic syndromes. From a scientific perspective, the Star Child skull has no connection to aliens. DNA analysis revealed its genome to be entirely human, without the slightest trace of foreign genetic material. Yet, the story continues to captivate. Its strange appearance and the mysterious circumstances of its discovery have become fertile ground for myth, clearly demonstrating how rare biological anomalies can give rise to the most incredible theories in the public consciousness. Lurking in the dark corridors of medieval European history is the sinister figure of Baphomet, whose name is inextricably linked with the tragic fate of the powerful Knights Templar. This mysterious word first appears in court records from the early 14th century. At that time, the French King Philip V of the Fair and Pope Clement V, using torture and trumped-up charges, decided to destroy this wealthy and influential military monastic order. Several knights were forced, under excruciating torture, to confess to worshipping an idol named Baphomet. Descriptions of this creature in interrogation reports were vague and contradictory. It was sometimes ascribed human and sometimes bestial features, creating an image of something vague and terrifying. Modern historians believe that the very name Baphomet may have arisen from a distorted pronunciation of the Prophet Muhammad's name. During the Crusades, in an atmosphere of religious hostility and cultural misunderstanding, such errors were common. Moreover, name distortions were often used as a powerful propaganda tool to accuse enemies of heresy and idolatry. Following the brutal defeat of the Knights Templar, the legend of Baphomet took on a life of its own, permeating European folklore and gradually evolving into the image of a demonic entity. Although such a being never existed in reality, its image was reborn in the 19th century. The French occultist Eliphas Levi created the iconic image we know today, a hybrid creature with a goat's head, a female torso, and wings, symbolizing the duality of existence and magical powers. This creation, which bore little resemblance to the initial accusations against the Templars, became a central figure in Western esoteric teachings and merged with modern concepts of demons. The story of Baphomet is a striking example of how, over the course of several centuries, a misunderstood term, born in the crucible of political intrigue and propaganda, can transform into a powerful and enduring symbol of evil in the collective consciousness. Here's a story that shatters all stereotypes about the clash of civilizations. It's the legend of Gonzalo Guerrero, a Spanish sailor who not only survived the New World, but became an integral part of it, completely immersing himself in Native American culture. In the early 16th century, after a terrible shipwreck off the coast of Yucatan, Guerrero and a handful of surviving companions were captured by the Maya. For most of his companions, this was the end. Some died, others became slaves, but a different fate awaited Guerrero. Step by step, he began to adapt to life in a foreign world. He learned the Mayan language, adopted their customs, and, thanks to his intelligence and courage, managed to earn respect and achieve a high position in the community. Historical records confirm that Guerrero became a military leader under a ruler named Nachan Khan and personally organized resistance against his former compatriots, the Spanish conquistadors. He didn't just live among the Mayan people, he became one of them. He married a Mayan noblewoman named Zazel Ha and fathered 3 children, who are considered the first mestizos in history, people with both Spanish and Native American blood. According to contemporary accounts, Guerrero covered his face with tattoos and pierced his ears to completely break with his past and integrate into the new society. He embraced Mayan culture so deeply that when Hernán Cortés arrived in Yucatan and invited him to return to the Spanish, Guerrero flatly refused. His choice became the subject of heated debate among historians, as it demonstrated that contact between 2 worlds was not only conquest and conflict, but also an opportunity for cultural fusion. Guerrero's story is more than just a tale of survival. It symbolizes the creation of the mixed communities that ultimately defined the unique character of Latin America. His fate illustrates the complex process of adaptation and cultural fusion that challenges conventional notions of the interaction between Europe and the New World. For modern anthropologists, the figure of Gonzalo Guerrero is key to understanding how new societies emerged and how human identity can be both resilient and incredibly flexible in the face of great historical change. The legend of the Philosopher's Stone is a mystery dating back to the Middle Ages and closely intertwined with the enigmatic art of European alchemy. Ancient texts describe the Philosopher's Stone as deep in the mists of time, in the dusty laboratories and secret treatises of alchemists, there lived one great dream, one all-consuming idea, the legend of the Philosopher's Stone. It wasn't just some mystical object. No, in the minds of the greatest thinkers, it was a symbol of absolute knowledge, the key to the mysteries of matter itself and its transformative power. Let's delve into the works of such intellectual giants as Roger Bacon, Paracelsus, and even Isaac Newton himself. For all of them, the search for the Philosopher's Stone became their life's work, the central axis of their quest to understand the universe. Legend has it that this mysterious stone possessed truly divine powers. Imagine dull, unsightly lead or ordinary copper, transformed in the hands of a master into dazzlingly shining, pure gold. But there was another, even more daring dream it promised. It was believed that the Philosopher's Stone was the key ingredient in creating the elixir of life, a miraculous potion capable of granting absolute health and, most incredible of all, eternal life. This concept itself, this obsession with perfection, didn't arise out of nowhere. Its roots go deep into Greek philosophy, with its ideas about achieving the ideal form. For alchemists, stone was the pinnacle of creation, the highest stage of matter's development. But it could only be achieved through a long, grueling process of purification, not only chemical and physical, but also spiritual and philosophical. In mysterious texts such as the famous Corpus Hermeticum, the philosopher's stone was no longer simply a tool for enrichment. It symbolized the profound spiritual transformation of man himself, his transcendence of the material world. And yet, despite titanic efforts and centuries of searching, not a single scientific, physical proof of its existence has ever been found. The paradox is that it was precisely this great legend that had a colossal influence on the birth of true science. The greatest minds of the Renaissance, from Bacon to Newton, were literally obsessed with this mystery. They dedicated decades of their lives to studying the most complex chemical reactions, and in their alchemical experiments, without realizing it, they laid a solid foundation for all of modern chemistry. Today, the myth of the philosopher's stone lives on as a powerful cultural symbol. It embodies humanity's eternal, insatiable desire for knowledge and mastery over matter. Ancient manuscripts and historical chronicles associated with this legend continue to captivate researchers, vividly demonstrating how science, mythology, and philosophy were intricately intertwined in the cauldron of the human mind. Now let's travel even further back in time, to the sun-baked banks of the mighty Nile, to the time of the mighty pharaohs. Modern archaeological research in Egypt has created a sensation, presenting irrefutable evidence that the ancient Egyptians possessed metal from outer space long before they learned to smelt terrestrial ores. Detailed chemical analysis of ancient artifacts has revealed an incredible picture. Numerous iron objects, buried for millennia in tombs alongside pharaohs and queens, contained abnormally high percentages of nickel and cobalt, a sort of celestial fingerprint. This was direct evidence that the Egyptians had discovered and skillfully processed meteoric iron. And here we have the most famous of these pieces of evidence: the legendary dagger, discovered in the centuries-old darkness of the tomb of the young pharaoh Tutankhamun. Alongside it lay other treasures of unearthly origin: iron amulets, strange jewelry from the necropolis at Saqqara, small arrowheads, and knife blades. Just think, all these objects were created thousands of years before the forges capable of taming iron first blazed in the Middle East. But the evidence wasn't just in the sarcophagi, it was carved in stone. Ancient hieroglyphs adorning the walls of pyramids and tombs contain references to metal that fell from the heavens. This term leaves no doubt. The Egyptians not only witnessed the fall of meteorites, these fiery messengers of the cosmos, but also understood their value, using them in their most sacred rituals. Imagine this scene: night over the desert, and suddenly a streak of fire pierces the sky. For the ancient Egyptians, this was more than just a beautiful phenomenon. It was a gift from the gods. They deliberately collected meteorite fragments, as the iron found in them was considered sacred. Ceremonial objects were crafted from this precious material, meant to symbolize the inviolability of royal authority and the divine power of the ruler. Such objects were never used in everyday life. Their destiny was to serve in sacred rites, as offerings to the gods, or as silent symbols of eternal strength. This profound understanding of the origin and value of meteoric iron poses complex questions for modern historians. How advanced were the ancient Egyptians' astronomy and cosmology? How closely did they observe nature? The facts speak for themselves. The Egyptians distinguished very clearly between celestial iron and iron smelted from ore. This indicates a level of knowledge about materials that was simply astonishingly ahead of its time. Both ancient texts and archaeological finds confirm that the inhabitants of the Nile Valley gazed at the sky with more than just religious awe. They actively wove the gifts of the cosmos into the fabric of their material and spiritual culture. These discoveries have completely upended our previous understanding of technological progress and the role of astronomy in ancient Egyptian society. They paint a picture of a remarkable time when the boundaries between faith science, and technology were blurred, giving rise to astonishing breakthroughs that outpaced history by millennia.